What is up, guys? Coach Kobo back in the building, and shout out to the hockey crew, because that's what y'all gonna be known as from this day moving forward. What is up, hockey crew? We back here today with a tier list of what the ban list has implicated for OP09. Okay, so today we're going to be talking ban list, best deck, top tier, amazing, good, barely local levels, would not even bother. If your deck isn't here, I'm sorry, I'm just letting you know, I wouldn't bother. And then obviously, rest in peace to the fallen soldiers. I'm gonna put them out of their misery right now. Rest in peace, my man Saka. Rest in peace, Law, because like, why did you guys do this? I get it, it's unhealthy for the game. Anyways, so we're gonna get into this ban list, tier list prediction, quote unquote. And I'm really gonna start off with like the easy ones. I am gonna go into like would not bother. So I'm just gonna knock some of these out. King I wouldn't touch, Hannibal I wouldn't touch, Hody I wouldn't touch, Isha wouldn't touch, Ivankov, Iceberg, oh, barely locals level. Good try, buddy. Alright, Kaido. Kaido, yeah, probably. I mean, what are you getting to? Nothing. Odin. Oh no, that's not Odin. Gets Kinemon, right? I feel like my man could be at barely locals level and EBO2 or like even good. Kiro could be decent, right? But for right now, I wouldn't bother. Get Kiros out of here. Lucci, bro. Airdoor Lucci. Nope. Not today. Not here. Red green Luffy. Nope. ST Luffy. Actually, people haven't. You know what? I don't know. I'll keep it here for now, but we might come back to that one. Magellan out of here. What else do we have? Dragon. Dragon's okay. Odin. I think this Odin's bad. I think this Odin's better. Zoro. Queen is not bad. Rebecca. Sakazuki could go. Sanji could go. Shanks could go. All the Utas could go, honestly. I tried playing red purple Uta. It's just not worth it. Yamato can go. BB could go. Sanji's decent. Okay, this is what we're left with. Croc could go for sure. Croc could also go here. Rosanante. Oh, I forgot the big moms, bro. The big moms could go for sure. As Ace is okay. Let's see. Anything else I'm missing here, guys? Let's see. I think honestly, for the most part, that's it. Zephyr could go. Yeah, I think the rest of the leaders actually have some consistency meta. Kid could probably go. Yeah, I think some of these do have something to like show for themselves, right? Now, not all of these are gonna have tops, but some of these are gonna be decent, right? So let's start off with the first on the list. So Ace, blue yellow Ace, my boy Shadow Mosh did actually top an event with this. I think he topped an Eggman event with this. I will say it's barely at a locals level, and the reason why is because of the fact that it has a problem with its engine. It does get better with the introduction of OP8 Ace, but till then it didn't really have a mechanic that could get it consistently into Ace, into Luffy. And I think that maybe with ST13 on the rise, with the Three Brothers 3rd anniversary set coming out, this could go to good, maybe even amazing, and we're just gonna have to see. But for right now, I think it is a barely locals level deck. Same thing with its counterpart from OP03 Ace. Polka's D Ace is really good. I actually seen it go on a run recently. I believe it was in an online treasure cup that was like 6-0 or something. It eventually got defeated, but like Ace was doing pretty well there. Or like, actually no, it might have gone even further. I think it was like 8-0, and it faced the Luffy TB actually. So like, that's kind of crazy, right? I don't think that I could personally pilot the deck, and I don't think a vast majority of people could pilot the deck, so I'm gonna leave it at locals. Arlong is interesting because I do think that it's like a locals level deck, but I also think that let me add a tier to this actually. All right, EBO2 waiting room. I do think that Arlong does scratch the surface of EBO2 waiting room. I think it can be super aggro, super tempo based, if it gets all the triggers that it needs. Bello Betty. I think Bello Betty is actually really, really good. I do think it's in that tier, like right below like tier 1. It is probably a 1.5, right? And just so you guys know, best deck I'm thinking about, actually, let's go like tier 1. So yeah, I think Bello Betty's at like that good tier 2 phase. I don't think it's a tier 1.5 deck. I do think it's super aggressive, but I do think that it loses very quickly and very fast, as Bello Betty does usually, if it runs out of gas, right? So you need to hit fast and you need to hit hard, right? If you're Bello Betty. If you're not going to do that, then you lose to literally any blocker in the game. You lose to like pretty much any removal in the game. And because Lucci got hindered, right? Bello Betty could be easily the 4th best deck in the format, but for right now, I do not think it's proven itself yet. So I'm going to keep it at tier 2 for now. I can see it eventually going up to tier 1.5, but for right now, we'll leave it at tier 2. Boa is another deck where I think its place in the meta could be similar to Bello Betty. It does lose its bad matchups in Lucci, and it does lose also a good matchup in Black Yellow Luffy, right? So it lost one, it gained one. It also lost the matchup into Dofi, that like Dofi used to be the better Boa, so why would you ever play Boa? Boa is more on an even playing field with Dofi now more than ever, right? I think Dofi, and let's just get this out the way, is still a tier 1 deck. I just think that we have to pilot it differently now to make it more mid-range than aggro, right? Before you could Jinbei spam, now you can't, so you have to play like 1 or 2 bodies a turn max. Even on 10 Dawn, you can still play 3 bodies a turn with Teach. But that point being said, like Boa can still like clear things every turn, so like that's really good, and get card advantage. So I think Boa is like, oh my god, I'm almost convincing myself making tier 1.5. I'll keep it at 2 for now, and we'll see where it ends up. Next on this list is going to be Bonnie. I do think Bonnie easily becomes a tier 1 deck with the removal of Lucci. Again, it loses its good matchup in Black Yellow Luffy, but I think that it's going to be a really strong deck in this meta. I do think that people are sleeping on Bonnie. I do think that it's going to eventually end up being a triangle meta with Bonnie, Luffy, and alright, now that we've added OP09 leaders, I think Bonnie, Luffy, and Teach are going to be competing for these top spots. I do think Dofi becomes like a 4th best deck in the format, honestly. And I do think ultimately Bonnie does probably win out, just because green is super free. Now that the boards aren't being as controlled, I think Bonnie becomes super free now that there's not as much removal in the game. Gecko and Ice Age were a super hard combo to combat for any deck, but especially Bonnie. Now that we don't have to deal with Ice Age's constant removal, I think Bonnie becomes really good into this meta. So I do think that this is going to end up being some sort of triangle where like Bonnie beats Pluffy beats Teach beats Bonnie, and that will probably be the starting points of my meta, but I do see that Bonnie ultimately comes out on top. However, I will say, just like Dofi being here, Lucci could also end up being, I want to say tier 1.5. I don't think it's tier 1 anymore, and the reason why I think it's tier 1.5 over 1 is because the inclusion of Blackbeard, right? So we lose the BY matchup. BY is basically dead, but we do gain the Blackbeard matchup being our toughest matchup. And I think that Lucci can probably out-tempo, we'll maybe put it tier 1. I think Lucci can maybe out-tempo Blackbeard if we get more of the mid-range, like if we add Kakus, if we add Hinas, and just spam board like Pluffy typically does. But I do not know how this matchup is going to go in the long term, because now they have Kuzan and they have Liberation. So Lucci's probably like somewhere in between 1 and 1.5, but for right now I'll keep it at tier 1 because I do think it's going to be a relevant deck still in this meta, okay? Next on this list, we'll just keep going in order. Rosinante, unfortunately, it is a barely locals level deck. I might even put it at would not bother, but as it stands, like I do think actually loses Jinbei. Like there are builds that had Jinbei, so you probably, yeah, I probably wouldn't even bother with this. This is like at the top of would not bother. Like if I really wanted to cook something, I'd probably cook Rosinante, but I wouldn't bother for now. Crocodile is a locals level deck. I've never seen it played past locals. I probably would put in would not bother, but it does have the combo of Kikanojo and O Come My Way. Now it does also have the inclusion of Hawkins, so you technically can O Come My Way into a Hawkins and make sure that they kill your Hawkins. So that's pretty good. Actually, this could be a tier 2 burn deck. I'm not gonna lie to you. Now I'd keep it at locals for now, but I could see like a cook variation with like Supernovas, Kid, Law. Yeah, I could see it. I could see it. Maybe not Law, because maybe you just play Kid and Hawkins and then you Okama away everything, right? That's something that I could see for sure. But basically, I think that Crocodile is probably at the top of barely locals level. And yeah, that's kind of where we're putting him. Dofi, on the other hand, green purple Dofi, got a shit ton of support in this set, but can barely crack a locals because people have realized Dofi is not really good now that Dofi's out the meta, right? So what are you really controlling? Like, you can control these aggro decks like Bello Betty, probably like a Boa too. But for the most part, unless you're controlling like an aggro Zuro, which again, sneak peek, is going to be tier 1.5, like, you're really not doing anything. Like, you have really bad matchups into things like Boa. You have really bad matchups into things like Blackbeard. Probably Pluffy because it can out-tempo you. Bonnie can rest your green characters. So I don't think that this leader has a place in the meta just yet. I think someone might be able to crack the code eventually, but for right now, we're just going to leave it as it is. I'll be honest with you, Dragon does come around in my locals, but I honestly might not even bother with this. With the inclusion of ST21 and that Luffy, I might say that it does have some viability, but not much, right? It's like really at the back end of this barely locals level, so I'll keep it there. Anel literally got a stray in the ban list. It lost Raigo, and it loses so much momentum because now yellow cannot deal with big bodies all of a sudden again, and it really sucks for that. So just for that reason, I am going to put it at the back of tier 2. I do think that Anel could still play the annoying starve method that we saw at Worlds, but without having access to Raigo, I think you really just have to start spamming all your big bodies and like swinging into big bodies to have any tempo swings. So I think that that puts Anel in such a bad position. So I would put it at the back of tier 2. I honestly might even put it in the EVO2 waiting room, see what the 10 cost brings into the meta for him. I think it could give it a resurgence. I do not know if it's actually going to make it any better than tier 2, but we'll put it at EVO2 waiting room for now. Foxy I think is such an interesting position because Foxy has a good matchup into Blackbeard. Foxy has a good matchup into Dopey. Foxy also has a good matchup into Bonnie. But at the same time, it had a terrible matchup into Lucci, and it doesn't have a greatest matchup into Pluffy either, right? So again, I would put this at like a tier 2 deck. I do not think that losing one of its better matchups in the meta helps it by any means at all. But I do think that losing Lucci, unless Lucci becomes super relevant again, doesn't hurt it, right? So I think that it's like at a tier 2 level. I do not think that right now it's going to be super relevant in our meta. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at. Garp, unfortunately, I would not even bother with it. Now with the loss of Ice Age, Ice Age really is the threshold that you needed in order to get Garp to clear anything on board. And now you just lose that for basically nothing. So like, you just got hit with a stray. I wouldn't bother with Garp. He might be a locals level warrior eventually, but as of right now, where we are in this current meta, I think Black just kind of like gets hindered, and Garp is a unfortunate victim of Ice Age bans, right? Next on this list is Katakuri. Katakuri is like a good always tier 2 deck. I do not think that it goes above tier 2. I honestly would say it's almost at a locals level, but Big Mom exists. Big Mom is the only reason this deck is even relevant. I cannot wait to put it at locals level. You know what? I'm gonna put the hot take and say it's a locals level deck because I've never really seen it outside of a locals level. I would not see someone bring it into regionals, and if they do, you could probably pretty easily beat around it. So that's kind of where we're at. Kid, Red Purple Kid, bro. Let me tell you a story. Red Purple Kid. I think this card and this leader is literally so gas. I think people just haven't cracked the code. Me and my boy Mosh did testing in OP09, or I think OP09, end of OP08.5, with Red Purple Kid, and I think this leader has so much potential. Right now, we haven't cracked the code, so it is like a tier 2 deck. I do not think it's tier 1.5, but I could see it creeping up to tier 1.5 if we crack the code, because like Kid and Killer exists, 5-cost Kid exists, Pudding exists. And what did we get in OP09? Did we get any purple support? We got God Thread. That could be pretty good. I don't know. I think that Kid is in a decent place in the meta. I'll keep it at tier 2 because I haven't seen any results with it just yet. But I do think it's going to be interesting. Law. What a controversial take, but I'm gonna say again, it's gonna be a tier 2 deck. And the reason why it's a tier 2 deck is because I think that with the consistency added of losing its worst matchup in Lucci and losing also probably a pretty bad matchup in Dofi, actually it probably goes in 1.5. Kind of you Law fans could think about like the Aggro variant of Law could be really good into a Blackbeard meta, into a Bonnie meta, even into a Plouffe meta. But if any of these two decks come back like with 90% of what they were, red purple or red green red purple or RIP, red green Law goes back to the top of tier 2. I think red green Law is probably even better than Bello Betty, if I'm being honest. And if I sound like I'm capping, I might be, but still I think red green Law is that good if you know how to navigate the deck. Tier 1.5, we are going to put red purple Luffy. I think this is an unchecked deck now that Ice Age is gone, and I think that really puts him on the map in the sense that like it has a good Blackbeard matchup, it has a really good Plouffe matchup. Dofi is like not what it was. Lucci can't handle it because we don't have Ice Age, and on top of that, the only thing that can really beat it here is Bonnie. So I might even put it over Zoro, because of the fact that I think this is a really good place for red purple Luffy to be at. Black yellow Luffy, I think it stays at about a tier 2. I want to put it like literally like right before Boa, or actually I'll put it in the middle of these. It loses Gecko Moria, the best card in the deck. Without that, you kind of lose your engine. And it's really tough for Black Yellow Luffy to recover without the inclusion of Gecko Moria. I do think it turns into some aggro variant where you might add Ace back in, but at this point in time, it is unknown what Black Yellow Luffy's destination is next. So we'll just wait and see. So I'll put it at tier 2 for now. You can't count out the deck because 9k leader, but that's kind of where we're at. Unfortunately, I might even put ST14 Luffy right now leave at locals because of the fact that it lost Ice Age, it lost Gecko Moria. Not that it was using Gecko Moria that frequently or consistently, but at the same time, Gecko Moria was an 8 cost that was able to like just get it for free. This deck usually centered around Jack, but losing Ice Age just hurts really bad. You could replace it for the Nico Robin that you have. I just don't see it doing anything better than what like 90% of Lucci could do. So I would keep it at locals level at this point. So yeah. Next on this list is going to be Gecko Moria. Again, another victim to losing Ice Age and now Great Eruption and Gecko Moria itself. You don't even bother with this deck anymore, unfortunately, because what are you going to do, bro? Like, what are you going to do? You're going to play Upsilon for 4? You're going to play Perona for 4? I mean, you could, I guess, for 3, right? Bro, like, unfortunately, like, you're right next to King. Like, I've played Rosinante and Garp before I play Gecko Moria again, so unfortunately wouldn't even bother with that, man. Nami, what an interesting. I absolutely hate this deck, so if I would ban the shit out of this deck. But for right now, wow, it has really decent matchups. Yeah. Okay, so it loses Dofi, right? Dofi is still like 90% of what it is. I think it's a tier 2 deck. I think I might even put it towards the end of tier 2. Because if these aggressive decks like Red Green Law, Zoro, and Bello Betty start getting popular in the meta, Nami doesn't have a chance, right? But if for whatever reason we turn into a slow meta, which I don't think we do. I mean, Bonnie's slow, Blackbeard's slow, but that's about it. I think that Nami's almost like handicapped by the fact that we're going aggressive. Gotta go fast, gotta go hard. So I think it's still a tier 2 deck. I think it will always consistently top at least 1 locals, 1 regional, and all that stuff. But as of right now, if aggressive, if aggro is the version that we're going to go down for OP10, that route that we're going, I do not think that it actually holds any merit. Whitebeard, oh bro, everybody wanted us to bring back the boat. Because we didn't bring back the boat, I think we're like right here, right? It is a really good deck. Again, you can go super aggro with this. You could get the aces into the ace, and you can kind of go crazy there. But at the same time, I don't think this deck benefits from the fact that we have Plouffe in the meta, we have Bonnie in the meta, and then Blackbeard can kind of negate most of its on plays. So I think it's a tier 2 deck at best, unfortunately, and that's where I'm at. So Odin, I think, has something to cook with, right? But I think it is a local level warrior. I do not think it goes past local level warrior for a while. It has added some pieces recently. Dragon, Newgate has been there forever. What else has it added? It's added some pieces, but I don't think as of right now it has like any synergy with the pieces it has. It kind of just has its EB stuff, and then from there you kind of just hope for the best and play good green and red cards, right? You could play a kid variant, you could play Fortress. Not really something that you do with Odin. I would love to see it cooked, but right now it's a local level warrior. Perona, honestly, it's not the best deck in the format. It's and it lost fucking Gecko Moria, so like you're right next to your mans, honestly. Queen, people have been speculating that Queen could come back. I don't think I'll put it at local, because I don't think I've actually ever seen Queen do well. Like I played against Queen like 2 or 3 times at a locals, and just smoked it, so I don't really think that it's a threat. I could see it, but yeah, Rebecca's super cope, guys. Like I know people are trying to make it work, I know Cross AI tries to make it work, but like honestly, super cope. Next on this list, Reiju. Reiju is not an even EBO2 waiting room, it is literally an OP11 waiting room. As of right now, as it stands, I do think it does become a tier 1.5 deck, but at the moment, it could surprise me, and I wouldn't be shocked if it goes to tier 1. Right now, I'll keep it at 1.5. We haven't seen anything that it does. I would keep it there. Red, yellow, Sabo. It has some aggro builds. Tier 2 for now. Sabo, I think this is like another local level warrior. I'm not going to explain that too much. Smoker lost Gecko, so again, wouldn't even bother with that. Vegapunk. Vegapunk lost his best matchup in Dofi. It's probably like a tier 2 deck. I think it still has some merit because it could go aggro. You could play the aggro variant of it. Like a yellow aggro deck would be kind of cool. And Vegapunk can do that. We've seen it time and time again do it and surprise us. But I do not think that it benefits from having Bonnie in the meta, so I'll keep it at tier 2 for now. Yamato, a whole bunch of 4 life leaders are all of a sudden coming to the meta. Where does that put Yamato? I think Yamato is literally probably right like around here. If you do the Onami Yamato double banish attack combo, you're probably winning. And 9 times out of 10, Yamato has to hit hard, has to hit fast. I can see it doing well in this meta, I'm not gonna lie to you. Red blue Sanji had to play Jinbei in order for it to do anything, and now it lost Jinbei, so I'm just gonna put it, I would not even bother. And now we're going into our OP09 and OP10 leaders, so let's get into it. Shanks, I think, is honestly right above Dofi. I do think that Shanks ends up being the 4th best deck in this format. Shanks has a good matchup into Blackbeard in my opinion. Shanks also has an okay matchup into Bonnie. Pretty good actually. I think Pluffy is the biggest 50-50 here, and Pluffy is what will keep Shanks in check. If Pluffy does not become tier 1 and Shanks is replacing it and we go something like this, that could also be the meta. Like I think that Pluffy is in a better state right now than Shanks, but I wouldn't be shocked if Shanks becomes the 4th best deck in the format, so I do think Shanks has a lot. Next on this list, I also think that red Smoker is also pretty good. I'm gonna put it at tier 1.5 for now, just because of the fact that I think Bonnie will be the supreme green deck in the format, but it does not shock me that red-green Smoker will eventually become really, really good in this format. Again, we need to see its tops, we need to see its results. In Japan, it did decent, like it did win a region, or the Nats, I think, actually. And Lucci's still a thing. So, like, I want to see how this interacts once Lucci gets figured out, right? So, tier 1.5 for now, but I could easily see it. Actually, I'll put it at the back of tier 1, okay? Caesar, I heard it's fun. I haven't even tried it. I haven't even looked at any Caesar cards, if I'm being honest. So I'm just gonna put it like somewhere here. Okay. Sugar. Sugar I played against. My boy Chris plays him. Shout out to Chris. I do think that it is a local level deck. I do think that it has some legs to it though. It does play 10 cost Shanks, 7 cost Beckman, I believe. And then it just like swarms with Dofi. I think it's like a tier 2 deck actually. It might not be a locals. I think it's a tier 2 deck. Probably like right here, like probably between Vegapunk and Foxy. I'll give it its credit. I think that a lot of people are underestimating Sugar. I would say that I don't know how it does at a regional level, so tier 2 is probably the best it gets, but that's kind of where I'm at. Usopp, I think a lot of people are coping with Usopp. I do not think it's that good of a deck. I think Rebecca is a worse Gecko Moria. I do think that unfortunately it becomes kind of susceptible to losing its best matchups. It lost Lucci, it lost Doofy, it lost BY. It is going to lose to Aggro. So as a result, I do think it's a tier 2 deck right behind the Aggro. I think this is probably more appropriate. Like, Black Yellow Luffy is probably over here. Usopp's ahead of it for sure. But it loses to a whole bunch of aggro. So Kid. So in my opinion, I think Kid is a 1.5 deck. And I'm going to tell you guys, Burn Kid is so real. I played in my locals last night. I got second with Burn Kid. And it's not going to be Piss Kid anymore. We're calling it Burn Kid. That is the rebrand name. Shout out to D Kaizoku. But we are calling it Burn Kid from now on. I never want to hear the word piss when you relate to my captain, okay? I just want you guys to know that, okay? So Burn Kid, I think is really good. It's actually really good into aggro decks. So I think it's like right here because it naturally has blocker, because you can naturally Basil on 4 and then be like, okay, you're gonna swing at me 6 times. I'm just gonna block out. I'm gonna block out, and then I'm gonna take a whole bunch of life. And that's fine because you're also burning their life. You don't even have to touch them, right? So then when they run out of resources and you're controlling board, then they have no life, they have no board, and you pretty much win from there, right? Red Green Law, or Red Yellow Law. I think this deck is good. I don't think it's figured out, and I think we are desperately missing the promo. So as a result, I think it like kind of sits in between here. I think Sugar might be better than it, honestly, right now. That's not saying much, but I do think that Sugar is better than Red Green Law at the current moment. I do think it takes a skill pilot to try it out. I haven't even tried it out, and I'm a Law fanatic, not a Red Green Law fanatic. I am a Red Purple Law fanatic, and that's basically where I think it places right now. Call me crazy, call me buggy, call me clowny, but I think Buggy becomes a tier 1.5 deck, knowing the fact that it has a really good matchup. Actually, tier 2. I'm lying. I'm coping. Knowing the fact that it has a really good matchup into Blackbeard, because if you negate all plays, you get 10 costs for free, is really good. I do think that it will lose to a bunch of these aggro decks that are kind of gatekeeping the meta right now. I think these decks are going to be defining, bro. I really do. I think that aggro is going to have a certain tone to it that you just need to anticipate. Speaking of aggro, I don't think this is super aggro, but the only card in this deck that makes it really good is 9 Cost Zoro. I lost to Lim yesterday in my round 3. I ended up placing second because they also won and ended up winning the locals with Lim. And I think that the only card in this deck that's actually really good is 9 Cost Zoro. But that's all they really need, especially because we lost Raigo. Now you don't even have to worry about, hey, if I play against yellow, they can remove that. They do still have to worry about Red Rock. They do still have to worry about other stuff. But for the most part, green really benefits from the fact, and I might even put it like here. Green really benefits from the fact that we don't have black as relevant anymore, right? And like, again, Lucci is going to be the biggest underdog of this set. We'll see what ends up happening with it. But I think that Lim is probably a tier 1.5 deck. That being said, I also think Nico's a tier 1.5 deck. I don't think it's lost anything. It never played Raigo, and I do think that it even becomes better now due to the fact that we lost Ice Age, right? It was susceptible to the Gecko combo like mini decks, and now you just get to keep your big bodies, your Yamatos, your Aces, your Luffys on board longer. And you could also play the Hawkins variant. So if you guys haven't seen on Twitter and on YouTube, I think the real_Josh did a gameplay video with Nico where you play Kaido Linlin and you play 3 Hawkins, and then you just burn 3 life from your opponent. It does take a bunch of things to set that up. If people want to play that, that's cool. I'm also thinking about just traditional Hawkins into Kid. Like, burn is like Yellow's identity at this point pretty much. So I do think that it will be relevant in the meta. I don't know how relevant because I think Kid is just a better version of it, but that's kind of where we're at. PB Luffy, I think, is an EBO2 waiting room. Not really. It did lose Gecko Moria. I think it's like a tier 2 deck. I will put it over Buggy. I will put Usopp over Buggy. Boa, Buggy. I think Boa's better. Buggy. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. All right. Are we missing anything? Are we missing 8 or 08 leaders? 08. My apologies. we forgot the OP08 leaders, so we're going to quickly view those. I do think Chopper becomes like kind of like a tier 2 deck, super aggro, super aggressive. I think Marco is also going to be in the EB02 waiting room for right now. I do think that it has some potential. I do think that ST22 is going to make it really, really good. As of right now, I do not think it has a place in the meta. Actually, I might make it tier 2. But I think it's like a low tier 2. We could see, like probably someone could correct the code and we'll go from there. Carrot is like barely locals level. I might put it like over here. Pudding is okay. I think it's a tier 2 deck. Again, Big Mom exists, so you have to acknowledge it, but other than that, it's alright. King is going to be a... well, not even bother if I'm being honest with you. And lastly, Calgara is going to be in the EVO2 waiting room, also waiting for a now with its partner, right? Let me know in the comment section down below if you have any other suggestions that you would like to see in this tier list. This is Coach Kobo coming live one more time, and I'll catch you guys in the next one, Hockey Crew. Peace.